Okay guys, in this video I'm going to talk a little bit about day rates, or kind of like how you charge or what you charge for as a commercial photographer. So I kind of want to, I'm on location here, a different location if you guys don't notice. It's Memorial Day, so hopefully I get this up tonight and you guys will, have a good Memorial Day. So the term day rate, well, when I was first starting, I worked as an assistant for a lot of commercial photographers. Day rate was used a lot more. And what it was supposed to represent was kind of your base fee, right? So you come into a situation and your day rate might be, whatever, $10,000. It might be $5,000, whatever it is, $100. It doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna use low numbers to make my math easy. So let's say your day rate is $100, right? So that doesn't mean that you make $100 when you go out and shoot. The day rate was generally the lowest of all the numbers, right? Because what you're gonna make money on is the expenses, the markup of the expenses, number one, but also you're gonna make money on usage. Usage is key, right? If you're going to shoot a campaign and it's going to be in a magazine that's seen by millions of people, you're going to charge more than if it's like posters for a local boutique, right? But your day rate, for the most part, was like a constant. So that's what ends up happening there, is that you won't get a really high-end photographer that normally gets $5,000 a day because they're shooting Calvin Klein ads. A local boutique is not going to, even if the usage on theirs was much lower, they're not going to be able to afford the day rate. So generally, day rates also meant more money in usage because you got the bigger clients and blah, blah. But anyways, the idea was that it was a base. What I found when I was coming up is that you got these kind of inexperienced art directors or clients that were working with you directly, and they hated to see a day rate that was high. They'd be like, I'm the CEO of this company. I don't make $5,000 a day. Why should a photographer make that? And what they're not taking into consideration is that, yeah, you also don't work, every day. And this is not like an hourly wage. You're not some employee. This is a business. So I never really liked that. I like the example, the story, which I don't know if it's true or not, but I think it's usually Picasso who they address as having happened to, where somebody asked him to make a portrait. And he literally just whipped out a piece of paper or something, or a napkin or something, and drew a portrait of the person in like 5 minutes, and then was like $10,000 or whatever, and gave a high number. And they were like, that took you 5 minutes, why should I pay you $10,000? And he was basically like, you didn't pay me for the 5 minutes to do that, you paid me for my lifetime of experience and my artistic skill and my eye and whatever. And that's what the day rate is, right? The day rate is like your fee, or your creative fee. And for me, that's what I always called it. On my estimates, I always mark it as creative fee. I don't say day rate. The only downside of doing this, I suppose, is that if you look at it like this, like if you're estimating a project is going to take 3 days, and you think to yourself, well, my day rate, but I don't want to write that on there, is $2,000 a day, so I put $6,000 creative fee. If it goes 4 days, it becomes a little bit weird. You make sure your small print says that if it goes extra days, you get extra, blah, blah, blah. Because otherwise you get stuck there, right? Because your creative fee could be for all your work, right? But I find that that's a better way to market. The term day rate is still used a lot, I believe, in magazine photography, usually where they do day over space rate. So, essentially you get a fixed day rate, which might be like, let's say $500. But let's say a full page in a magazine pays $1,200, or, a quarter page pays $100, or a cover pays $2,500. When in the end you do your shoot, let's say it takes 2 days, so that would be $1,000, right? If they only use a quarter of a page, you still get the $1,000. If they use a cover or a full page, you would get that equivalent instead of the day rate. So you get basically whichever's higher, not both. That's kind of how magazine stuff works. For commercial photography, we usually do a creative fee, and then we do expenses, and then we do usage. So when somebody approaches you to do a project, this is kind of what I talk a little bit about. And we're just going to say this fictional project it's for a local, we'll say regional boutique. And this boutique wants you to shoot in-store, in-store displays. So basically the posters that go on the walls that show the clothes or whatever else they're selling there. Now what you're going to do is they're going to call you and they're going to be like, hey, we have this local boutique, what's your day rate? Or something like that. And you're going to be like, well, I need to know more about the project. Because you can kind of make your creative fee go up and down depending on how much you have to put into it. But you need to know things like, are you responsible for talent? Meaning that, are they going to have to be paid through you? My recommendation there is almost never is that a good idea. It's much better to have them pay the talent on their own. Because that's just more money passing through that doesn't need to be. Do you need to do the, but even if that is the case, do you need to do the castings for the client, right? Because that might require, extra days or assistants or studio space or whatever to do the castings, right? Do you, what about locations? Where do they want to do it? In your studio, if you have a studio, or is the project large enough that we're going to need a large studio? So we might want to rent. How do they want it? Do they want it on 17 different background colors? That's all expenses, right? Do they want it on just all on white? Do they want a variety of models? Do they want how many outfit changes? How many posters they're going to want shot? So how many total images probably to do? And then you're going to look at, okay, and then how many times are you going to use this thing? Okay, so you have 10 boutiques in the Northeast, and each boutique is going to have 15 posters. So that's 150 posters. So that's your usage, right? You're going to make 150 posters with this. And how long are you going to leave them up? For 6 months? How long do you want rights to these images? Do you want to use them forever? A lot of times if it's a catalog, that's not really a huge issue because you're never going to be able to sell the images anyways. So whatever, like how long they use it is almost never really an issue because they're not going to use it beyond the usefulness of the images. So that's a little different. But if it's an advertising shot that's more generic, they could use forever. I mean, I was a photo assistant in Miami in the late 90s, early 2000s, and every once in a while I will look in a travel magazine and I will see a shot that I assisted on. So if that photographer gave unlimited usage, and didn't get extra money for it, or didn't get paid a day for that, they're still using that image, and you basically lost out. So you want to make sure that if you're giving them unlimited, that they're paying for it, And if not, that then they get so much time, and then if they come back to you in 5 years, hey, the 5 years is up, we still want to use your image. You don't stab them to the face with with a high price. I mean, at that point it's gravy, right? So you charge them fairly for it, but you want to keep the client. So usage is key in those kind of things, right? And also exclusivity. You basically want to know whether or not you can sell the images after. Right? Because if you're doing something and there might be something that you could sell, especially if it's shots that don't have people in it, which is much more feasible. Like let's say, the tourism of Colorado hires you to shoot, and you go out and shoot mountain peaks, and even if there's hikers and they're really tiny in the picture, so it's like they're timeless photos. Are you going to own those pictures? Can you sell them for stuff like art? Could you sell them to other things? This is all, some hotel might want to buy those as stuff to put in the rooms even, or they might buy them as, used for their advertisement. So these are all things you want to know. Do I own these things? And you can factor all those things in when you're figuring your rate out. And that's all part of it. You don't want to, if somebody comes to you and they're just like, you're going to do this, we're going to own everything, you're not going to get shit for it, and we're going to use it forever, then you charge them the most. If it's kind of like a cool project and it's like, well, you're going to own all the rights, we only want to use them for a month, we're only going to use them for this one specific thing, and something you want to do and you think you could sell, well, then you might want to make the price lower because it's worth doing it, right? And this is it, right? You got to figure out all these things. And what you're going to do is you're going to put together an estimate. And that estimate, you need to think of everything. When you sit down and do an estimate, imagine yourself at the shoot, like in a 360 virtual reality room, and look all around you. What's there? It's not just you. It's not just whatever, the lights. It's not just the whatever. There could be the makeup artist, plus the makeup artist assistant, the stylist assistant, catering, extra assistants, a runner maybe. Maybe you've got, snacks, you got bottled water. All this stuff you need to figure out into your budget, and part of that becomes doing research. So like when I have to make an estimate for something, I'm going to call the caterers, and I'm going to be like, how much is it to do this day? This is what I'm looking for, and they'll give me a number. You're going to mark that up. Everything gets marked up, and you might think, oh, well, that's not fair. Or the clients often think that's not fair. But the reason why you're marking it up is because you're doing the labor to set it up. So that markup is like your money for spending 2 hours on the phone setting up the catering. Now, if the client wants to pay them directly, then you need to charge some kind of production fees. Production fees would then cover that. So you could do it either way. Usually just marking stuff up is easier. When you start adding too many fees, the clients start to get a little antsy. So I generally find just marking everything up a little bit to kind of cover your time is super useful. And, from there, you basically think of anything you might need. You imagine the shots, you talk to the art director about what the shots are. What do they look like? Think about how you're going to light it. Do I need to rent stuff? Almost certainly in New York you do, because most big rental studios won't let you bring in your own lights. So you got to rent lights. What format are we going to shoot it? Do we want medium format for this? Do we want, a certain camera type? Do we want higher megapixels than I own? So I'm going to have to rent that. You want to try to get all that into your budget, right? You want to rent for it, especially if it's something special. If it's something that you probably should have, then suck it up. You got to obviously be realistic. And you're going to put together this estimate, and this estimate is going to, then go to the client for approval. And then once they get it, now what I normally do is, this is pretty standard practice, on your estimate, you're gonna say, upon approval of the estimate, which is they're gonna sign it, right? 50% fee is up front. That's it. You want half, at least, up front. The balance due at the day of the shoot if it's a commercial project, because they're walking away with hard drives full of their images. There's no reason why you should have to wait, right? They know they got it. They were there. So none of this bullshit, clients will often try to give you, we're going to send you a check and it'll take a few days, but you don't want to put 90 days out. Screw that. Why should you be financing them, especially if they're a big company? It's like, you want to make sure that you're paid and that you get your money and that all your help gets their money. Because I will tell you this right now, having worked as a photo assistant, the worst thing in the world as photographers that get the 50% up front and put that shit in their pocket. I'm sorry, I'm swearing a lot. No, that money is to pay your assistants, to pay the stylists, to pay the makeup artists. That's how you're going to keep crew on your side. You pay everybody, right? So you are going to have to wait a bit to get paid, which is why you want to be paid the balance upon completion, right? If there are other expenses, because in your estimate you're going to write, so I usually say 10%. Most people are fine with that. This is an estimate. Fees may increase up to 10% without client approval. Anything over 10% must have approval. So when they show up, let's say that your total estimate is $10,000. They show up at the day of the shoot. You've already given you $5. They show up with a check for $5 on the day of the shoot. But when you get home and you figure out your final estimate, it's actually another $700. Well, that's within the range of what you can just automatically charge them for. So you just send a final estimate. We have these extra fees, and final invoice, I should say. And they'll pay it because it's in the invoice that it's fine. Make sure all that stuff's up front and make sure you say in it, no rights granted until payment in full. That line has saved me many, many times when somebody didn't want to pay me, because they start their print run and your images are out there and they haven't paid you, and you say, guess what? You don't own the copyright to those images. I'm going to have to sue you if you don't pay me. You'll lose the client for sure if that has to happen, but if they're that far down the road, you don't want that client anymore. So, keep that in mind. This is all, I'm not a lawyer, but these are like little tricks that I've learned over time. Make sure they know they don't get any rights to the images until they paid you in full, and you should be paid in full the day of the job. This is super true if you're a wedding photographer. I'm sure all wedding photographers do this too. You need to be paid, if they didn't pay you before the day of the ceremony, that day they should be handing you a check. I know it seems uncouth to be like, where's my money? But no, I'm sorry, because when that day's over, you're never gonna get that money. They're on their honeymoon spending it. So make sure you get that money. Magazines are different. They generally front nothing. So you get yourself a credit card and make sure you're paid within 30 days. But magazines are pretty fast about paying expenses, especially, so don't worry too much about that. And make sure you understand, or they understand, like you're gonna have some expenses, and that's okay, because some magazines don't like that. Like I've definitely shot for local magazines that think, yeah, that's a $350 day rate is all you're getting, They're not gonna pay for your parking, they're gonna pay for nothing. So make sure you know up front if you have some expenses that you can spend. So that's more commercial focused, I guess, guys. Hopefully that was helpful. I'll try to do some more of these that are more kind of, what I call consumer, like dealing with headshots and stuff like that in the future. This one's already getting kind of long, and it's Memorial Day. Hopefully you guys had a great holiday. I'm going to have to upload this now, so hopefully you'll see it before it's too late. If you guys don't already, please subscribe. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, so you see my my new videos when it comes up. And if you don't know, I also do a lot of Adorama, so if you check my other playlists, you'll see like on set and stuff like that. So watch those videos, that helps me out a lot. And I'll see you next time.